Now we've got on the line the one and only Alex Jones, and I'd like to go to Alex and ask him, Alex, have you heard about this big plot to blow up trains and tip them off bridges today?
Absolutely. We knew that this was coming. Obama comes out with a calculated statement that now we're all safe. Just like in a State of the Union, he said, don't worry, you can ride on the new mass transit trains we're going to put in, and you won't have to go through the scanners or be groped. And then people started laughing in the Congress because it's all a big joke. I saw Governor Ridge, and I know I say this every week or so because it's so important, on C-SPAN 8 years ago in a 2-hour meeting with CEOs saying there will be TSA-trained local goons, local federal auxiliary at every building, every grocery store, every shopping mall, hardened federal checkpoints on the highways, random checkpoints, and they're going to take blood, they're going to take tissue swabs out of the cheek, they are going to stick their hands down your pants. This is about all of America and the Western world being a prison. This is about all of us being told to line up. England, as you know, has the mobile body scanner vans. They're now getting those here in the United States. This is all socially engineered. This was all being worked on by the big defense contractors pre-9/11. And as Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex, in any third world country, it's normally the military, the corrupt leaders of it, that take over the nation. Well, here it's that whole defense complex owned by the big offshore banks, and it's very elementary. They staged the terror attacks with their patsies. It doesn't matter. There's a huge history of bin Laden in Sudan arrested, and Clinton didn't want him, or then them trying to use bin Laden's people to kill Gaddafi, and that's BBC, Associated Press, from the 2000 and what was it?
2002, I think.
Yeah, 2002. And then people are like, ha ha, and then Al Qaeda's back attacking Libya again. They attacked the Serbs. But I want to go through a list of things here because I want people to understand what we're facing. Going back to Governor Ridge. Governor Ridge is so arrogant last year, he put out a book bragging that they put out fake terror alerts for political purposes. Ari Fleischer, to cover his hind end, 3 years before that, in a press briefing, admitted that they were doing that for political purposes. I mean, this is all admitted. It's just like Cass Sunstein admits they want to shut down free speech and want an internet kill switch. This is, and writes papers on it. That's what's so frustrating about the ignorant people out there who want to remain being ignorant. 99% of what we tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is on record by them. It's not Alex Jones that says the CIA put out fake bin Laden videos. They admit it. That's what's so frustrating. When you live this, you're informed, and you're not somebody in the lazy general public or even in lazy government who can just hear this and like a child decide that they're going to say it isn't real. Now, let me run through a laundry list here. We know Al Qaeda was created and controlled by the criminal element that runs our government and other governments. We know they use them as a pretext to launch wars. We know they use them as a pretext to have domestic police state crackdowns and to make what government and corporations do secret from us, we the people, while they rob us through government control that's setting up monopolies for them. But clearly, we have said that as the economy implodes, as they launch these new wars, that they would then bring in stage terror. And this death of bin Laden is a psychological resurrection of him. Then they introduced the 4 new bin Ladens, 3 of which on record trained in the U.S., 2 of which on record absolutely worked for the federal government at the highest levels of black ops. And they're so arrogant, it's just admitted everywhere, but still it's not kosher to point that out. So they're rolling them out just like they did pre-9/11. I'm seeing the exact same preconditioning. So maximum, total red alert. Everyone, and in fact, I'm going to ask Aaron Dykes to do this next hour. We need to get the White House number, the Congress number, the switchboard, launch Operation Expose the Government Terrorist, Part 2. I haven't done this in 10 years, since July of 2001. Maximum total alert, ladies and gentlemen. You must call them. We need to get an article out today or tomorrow by one of the great researchers there, pointing all of this out with the phone numbers, and call them. We need links in the articles to all these White House advisors like Robert Shapiro in the Financial Times of London saying a terror attack would sure help us. It'd sure be great. Obama's got to get in Oklahoma City or 9/11 so he can get his New World Order. We need all those Republican neocons that wrote editorials saying how great September 11th was. See, they're all communicating with each other like we're too stupid to see it, begging for it, calling for it. And here's my main point. I want everybody to hear me. And I'm begging everyone to listen to me very, very carefully. And I'm going to go right through till 5 after next hour. Then we'll bring Aaron Dykes in. And if Steve can hold over and has any comments with Aaron, he's welcome to. But I want to point this out right now. And I want people to listen to me very, very carefully. All that stands between the New World Order, just taking all the pension funds, launching World War III with Pakistan. They've got nukes. Every analyst says it will probably trigger World War III, not may. This is also part of framing Pakistan. It always has a geopolitical, external foreign policy element than the domestic policy. They like full spectrum win-win-wins. I want everyone to listen to me very carefully right now. Please take this to heart. All that stands between free humanity, our children, the innocent people, the folks on fixed incomes, people on Social Security, people that have paid into public and private pensions. The globalists have done this in every other country they've fully taken over. The only thing that stands between us and real hot tyranny, I mean the arrest wagons going around, the FEMA camps being filled, mushroom clouds, the only thing that stands between us and that is we the people look in the mirror. If you look at the mainstream media, hundreds of newspapers, prestigious establishment magazines are lowering their guns on us from their pile of cess and firing at Infowars.com, Alex Jones, Dr. Pieczenik. We are the resistance. When we come back, we're going to talk about this. You are the resistance, folks. You are the resistance. Don't underestimate the power that you have. We'll be right back with Steve Watson, Dr. Steve Pieczenik coming up, Aaron Dykes. I have key intel.
The globalist interests that have usurped our governments target Pakistan with more drone attacks today. We're talking the beefing of the domestic police state, and the way I see it is the danger now is that Bin Laden's officially gone, so they're going to attempt to elevate another patsy into the public mindset by, staging another attack and blaming it on maybe, Al-Awlaki, the guy who dined at the Pentagon after 9/11, or, Gadan, the Mossad agent turned hardcore Islamist. Let's go back to Alex Jones. And Alex, what's your take on that? What do you think about that?
Well, I want to be 100% clear with people. The globalists have clearly made the decision to roll out this new fear campaign, introduce new boogeymen to the public, and try to reinvoke, as President Obama said Sunday night, the feeling we had after 9/11. Well, what was that feeling? Nuke everybody, take all my rights away, stick your hands down my pants. It was a people ready to be robbed. It's very simple. These outside globalist interests come in, take over the government, wrap themselves in the American flag. The good old boys riding around with their U.S. Army veteran sticker on their car are good people. They just can't bring themselves to admit just how criminal these elements are, and that they're using outside elements as a pretext to get them to basically rebrand American values, that it's not land of the free, home of the brave. It's land of TSA checkpoints in the mall, groping your small children. And so they've been quietly rolling all of this out, training everyone to become accustomed to having federally authorized goons come up, ask you questions, take you away, question you for the next step that will be mass arrest of U.S. citizens. And at that point, they also know that a small percentage will fight back. They will then be called terrorists, and they will then be called American white Al-Qaeda. You don't hand over your ranch, you're white Al-Qaeda. You don't let the CPS take your kids, you're white Al-Qaeda. You don't let them take your pension fund, you're white Al-Qaeda. And we have all the internal government documents. We published them. It's never been about Al-Qaeda. It's never been about Anwar al-Awlaki and Bin Laden. And I just want people out there to understand this is the crossroads. Globally, they're trying to launch an attack on Pakistan and frame them. We predicted this months ago. Domestically, it's about expanding the police state. Right as everything collapses, they don't want to take the blame for what they have done consolidating power. They want to destroy us economically with their Ponzi scheme. You notice Salente was saying no one could have guessed that the money was all going to offshore banks. Well, a year and a half ago, I put out Fall of the Republic. You can play the ad for Fall of the Republic out a year and a half ago. That's almost a year and a half before it was released. I said in the film, the offshore criminal cartel that took all the money from the bailout. That's because I've studied these people. It actually wasn't secret that the main owners of the Federal Reserve were the Bank of England and the German Bundesbank. So, of course, it went offshore. That's who owns America through the 1913 takeover. And now they want to own you and your family, so they want to bankrupt you. So you go into receivership. So right when they set up their world government publicly, right when they start really raping you and raising gas prices and devaluing the dollar, right when the euro plunges, right as they have designed all this as just stepping stones towards the new global SDR Bancorp currency, right as they do that, out comes the boogeyman to menace everyone into rallying around the flag, which the globalists have captured, very simple, and bowing down to them so they can gang rape us because we are saying protect us from the scary man in the cave who has Superman-like powers. And so here comes the staged terror attack. And remember, you are the resistance listeners. We are the only main voice now fighting them. Thank God we've built up to the point of having millions and millions of great activist people. Get the word out. If you value any of your freedoms, if you don't want to be slaves, you must go to everyone now. You must spread this audio. You must call the White House. You must call all the media and say, do not stage new terror attacks. Do not stage new terror attacks. 9/11's an inside job. The bin Laden situation is a hoax. And when we come back in 1 minute, I will break down with Steve the evidence of it being a hoax. As we told you Sunday, it's now all been proven.
It's Friday, the 6th of May. This is the Alex Jones Show. I'm Steve Watson, webmaster at Infowars.net. I'm here with Alex on the line. We're just discussing the revamp of the domestic police state and the possible dangers that possesses. And from my perspective, all this comes at a very opportune time for Big Sis and Homeland Security, because just a couple of weeks ago they announced a complete revamp of their terror alert warning system, whereby they would get rid of the Sesame Street color-coded system under Bush and start, sending you direct alerts on your iPhone and Twitter and Facebook. And basically the alerts are going to become unavoidable. Alex, can you speak to that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole thing was rolled out. We told people Sunday that the photo of the Situation Room was fake, and Pieczenik told them that on Tuesday, and it's been all admitted now, completely fake, no video feed. The whole story's a lie. They add things that change to make you think the general overall lie has some truth to it. Well, we did kill bin Laden, but yeah, he didn't fight back, and yeah, he didn't throw his wife in front of the people, on and on and on. The bottom line is they're a pack of lying criminals. They've lied over and over and over again, and we need to remember that. The mainstream media keeps saying, Alex, is everything a conspiracy? Is everything a government lie? Well, certainly with the 9/11 fable, of course, if 9/11's a lie, the new bin Laden killing is a lie. Because the entire thing is a fraud, and it was admitted, mainstream news in the late 90s, that he had total renal failure and another disease on top of it, and couldn't live more than 5 to 6 years. I mean, this is absolute total fiction. And when Steve Pieczenik met bin Laden back in the mid-'80s, he was very, very sick. And of course, Pieczenik coming up in 30 minutes with Aaron Dykes. Has broken all that down and is also a medical doctor with 2 medical degrees. But this is all on record. But I want listeners to understand something. You can see it. All the scripting, the new terror alerts, the TSA with the telescreens going in, all of this is being done with big jumbo screens in public places saying spy on your neighbors, because they're bringing this country into a total depression with inflation because of dollar devaluation in the oil, in the food, and there is going to be restlessness. And so bin Laden and Al-Qaeda is just the cover for the rollout of the high-tech spying police state grid. There's been a full court press in the last year. That's why I said it's coming. With every major professional I know, prominent doctors, lawyers, my father, and then other dentists that he works with being approached at their office and at home saying, please spy on everybody for us. And this has nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. They are finding out who will work with them in a total takeover, and they're setting up the internet kill switch, the internet ID system. It's all coming down. They're announcing, yes, the cell phones are watching you. Yes, we're going to torture people. Notice how they're saying torture is great. Here's my final point. We need an article about this to point this out to everybody. If torture is so great, why did they kill bin Laden? Now we learn the order was to kill him. Because they don't want the secrets. Even if you believe they really killed him, they didn't want his history with the CIA and all the secrets he's got coming out. They wanted him dead. Even if you believe the official fable, if torture's so great and he was the treasure trove of all intelligence, they should be waterboarding him right now. Folks, none of it makes sense because it's only designed for the lowest common denominator of citizens who barely pay attention or maybe just read the headlines. The people that ran the hoax saying they killed bin Laden are the same people that staged 9/11. They are the same military-industrial complex. And these childlike people say, well, why would Bush let Obama bring this out later, not himself? Because they all work on the same team at that level, and they wanted to use bin Laden then, saying he was still alive, to be the boogeyman. Steve Watson, incredible job. Dr. Steve Pieczenik coming up next with Aaron Dykes. Steve, thank you for helping ride shotgun here the last 2 days. He does great work over at prisonplanet.com and prisonplanet.tv. My new video is out, Terrorism's Big Dirty Secret, at Infowars.com.
Dr. Steve Pieczenik is coming up at the half hour. Right now, we want to go to Alex's latest YouTube video, Terrorism's Biggest Dirty Secret, all about the statistics of how undangerous all these supposed terrorists are. Let's cue it as soon as possible.
I'm here today to talk to you about terrorism's big dirty secret. And no, it's not that governments stage events or finance criminal groups to carry out events so that those governments can crack down on their populations. Everybody knows about false flag, from Gulf of Tonkin to Adolf Hitler and the Reichstag, or Gleiwitz to start the war with Poland in 1939. For the sake of debate, let's just say 9/11 is exactly like they told us. Let's say Gulf of Tonkin was real. Doesn't matter if it's admittedly staged. Let's just say it was real. Let's say the Reichstag was real. Let's say it's all real. It's all real. Bin Laden's assassination is real on May Day, May 1st. It's all real. Everything's true. Government never lies. Government can be trusted and loved and cared about, and the big mega corporations that are not free market but use government to shut down their competition, they can all be trusted. Everything is happiness. Everything is love. Everything is reality when government tells you so. Anyone who questions a government statement or a major corporate statement is a conspiracy theorist. They're a truther. They're a birther. They're a deather. There's a label pre-made for them. Being skeptical is a criminal act. It's outrageous. These people are nuts. They should buy whatever they're told. It's horrible to question. Buy everything. Be gullible. I agree with that. So let's then talk here about numbers, about facts, and look at terrorism and its big, dirty secret. And I hope you'll look this up for yourself, but all of it is public information. Most of you already know this when you hear it. The big, dirty secret is, even if you buy the official story about terrorism and everything else we're told, and that now they want to have TSA at all the malls and grocery stores sticking their hands down our pants, because after all, we'll put up with their hands down our pants. We'll certainly give them our labor and our tax money, but they're good folks keeping us safe from terrorists. I forgot, well, the border's wide open. Again, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist and even have critical thinking and question anything they're saying. The point I'm trying to get at here is the big, dirty secret. Are you ready for the big, dirty secret about terrorism? No, it's not that it's false flag. They never stage anything. They're good folks. No, it's something that everybody knows. And it's this. They hype the living daylights out of it. Let's say it's real. On average, less than 20 Americans die a year from terrorism. But the media hypes it up with all this fear, and look at them, and this hatred and this tribalism, the outsider, and it's used as a distraction from the imploding economy, the illegal wars, all the things that are happening. No one can deny that. I looked it up. On average, over 100 people die a year of honeybee stings. from allergic reaction. Hundreds and hundreds die of peanut allergy. Hundreds more of wasp stings. Hundreds and hundreds, close to 1,000 every year from snake bites. Water moccasins, rattlesnakes, coral snakes. Do you see big terror announcements? The fear, a rattlesnake with a bin Laden beard and a turban. We've got to invade all these countries and go after all these nations because these snakes are killing close to 1,000 people a year. You have a better chance being struck by lightning, dying of a bee sting. You have hundreds and hundreds of times a better chance of dying in a car wreck, over 200,000 a year. Tens of thousands dying from hitting their head in the shower or on the pool. But do they hype it all up? Government cares so much about you. Here's the big secret, the big hoax. Government tells you, man, the government's job is keeping you safe. And we care so much that we're spying on all of you and watching you. And we get the Homeland Security documents, and almost all the spies are focused on gun owners, conservatives, libertarians, landowners, independent people that don't want to be part of the collectivist hive Borg. And so the big dirty secret is it's all a big hoax. If they're actually worried about deaths, they'd be concerned about the over 200,000 deaths a year from faulty prescription drugs. The 300,000+ deaths from mistakes at the hospital. The list goes on and on. No, they don't give a rat's behind about you and your family. They use really junior high or even childish boogeyman parables about scary men in turbans who want to kill you if you don't give your rights up and accept all these new wars. It's so elementary. Since when did land of the free, home of the brave become a shaking, cowering, Ren and Stimpy chihuahua afraid of the boogeyman? Since when did we say, take all my rights, keep me safe? Since when? And statistically, in the World Almanac, terrorism deaths for U.S. citizens is way down at the bottom. More people die when they plug in their coffee maker and the tile's wet and they get electrocuted. More people die when a bumblebee stings them. But we've got to change our whole way of life and endless hype and all the hysteria for something that is a vapor, an apparition, a delusion. They are creating irrational fears, and that's the big hoax. That's the big dirty lie. To have us fleeing over the edge of a cliff, running from an enemy that doesn't exist. You know, the British hunt pheasant by having their servants beat the bushes, bang on pots and pans and a wedge, and drive the pheasants out of the woods towards their palatial lords, hunting them with 12-gauge shotguns. And that's what bin Laden and all the rest of it is. The threat isn't bin Laden. The threat isn't Amr al-Awlaki when he's not hanging out at the CIA. The threat is the beaters, beating the bushes. That's the terrorists. So in a way, they are the threat. They drive you out towards the real threat, the royals lined up with their shotguns, shooting the pheasants that have been driven in fear out to be shot. The wicked fleeth when none pursueth. That's always one of my favorite Bible quotes, and I didn't steal that from True Grit. It's been one of my favorite quotes for years, but I'm glad they used it. So you've been given the big dirty secret. And it's right there for you to go find out for yourself. You've got hundreds of times better chance dying in car wrecks. We still drive cars every day. We still accept the risk. Hundreds of times a better chance dying of bad drug interactions. You still take the prescription drugs. Many, many times better chance of dying from a bumblebee or a wasp or a honeybee. So why do you have this irrational fear? Because deep inside your anthropology, your sociology, you have an archetypal fear of the other tribe coming to enslave you, coming to kill you. And in that is a great truth. In our human development on this planet, hurtling through space around the standard sun, the greatest threat we ever faced was the neighboring tribe deciding to come and kill all the men and take the women and children for themselves. Every culture's done it. And so when you see a guy wearing a dress and a turban and a beard, it's scary. And when they tell you the tribal enemy is coming to get you, you line up and you do what you're told. And the sociologists and anthropologists know that if they show you a man in a dress, bin Laden, you will crap your pants and give over your entire life to them. They're punching primitive buttons built into you for survival 50,000 years ago. We're facing a new enemy. And there comes the next instinct and the ultra secret they don't want you to know and what they're afraid of. Humanity are the ultimate survivors, the super dominant species of this planet. The omnivore super predator. It is because we adapt that we are all powerful on this planet and will project our species into the galaxy. Because we develop quickly, we adapt quickly, and we may be manipulated through some 50,000-year-old template.
Okay, folks, the rest of the video is on Infowars.com and on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. And Alex makes a great point. Ordinary life is very dangerous. There's bee stings, there's lightning, there's accidental drownings, electrocution, all of it more common than terrorism. The point of terrorism is not the acute danger, but it's the fear factor. The actual false flag attacks perpetrated by al-Qaeda, by bin Laden, are just the inciting incidents for the drama they want to unfold because they want to institute the police state, the security checks, they want to expand the wars overseas. And Alex is totally right. That is just the distracting panic mode incident to get you to focus on their agenda, to move you out of the bushes, metaphorically, into the open where you're easy prey. And we've never been in greater danger, at least it appears that way, with this new bin Laden. We're at another red alert. Those of us who have known 9/11 was a false flag event, those of us who have known the bin Laden shadow puppet enemy is a hoax, have been beating the drums for almost a decade, but it's time to stand up again and tell them to stop. Do not stage new terror. We're trying to stop the military-industrial complex, the globalists who want to hijack these scare tactics to expand wars, to maintain the military budget, even while we have unprecedented rhetoric about dropping the budget in Washington. We need to let them know. We know what's going on. We know the bin Laden death is a hoax. We have expert Steve Pieczenik coming up in the next segment. But we need to call the White House. We need to call Homeland Security, contact them at their online reports, let them know. The White House number again is the comment line, 202-456-1111. 202-456-1111. The switchboard number is 202-456-1414, 202-456-1414. Let them know we know who the real terrorists are, and we don't want to see another state's attack like 9/11. We don't want even greater security. We've already pushed back against the TSA invasive practices. We don't want security at our shopping malls and grocery stores. Ordinary life is dangerous enough, as you saw in Alex Jones' video. Right now, we go to Dr. Steve Pieczenik. He's an absolute counterterrorism and security expert. He worked under, I believe, 4 presidents, including directly under Henry Kissinger, Cyrus Vance, George Shultz, and James Baker, all at varying roles as Secretary of State and or National Security Advisor under the corresponding presidents. He has numerous PhDs, a background as a psychiatrist, and is the first psychiatrist to receive a PhD focusing on international relations. You can more or less guess what that means, something along the lines of black ops. But I'll let Steve Pieczenik explain himself. Doctor, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for that introduction. But quite frankly, really, it's not just black ops. What I was really trained to do, and it was a formula of training between Harvard and MIT, was really to understand strategy, tactics, how to develop treaties, how to do conflict resolution without using our military, and how to use our military in a way that they didn't have to go to war. And so I was involved in Camp David, the peace treaties between Israel and Egypt, and then the conflicts in the Palestinian areas, and then it was brought back in to do the peace treaties, the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, and disarming them without arms. But I do work with our military, and I have great respect for them. but I have in various roles. I think everything you said was correct. I think the audience should be aware of anything that resembles a suppression of liberty or an increased security in the name of homeland security or a stand-down or a false flag operation. But from my point of view at this point in time, I think that your public and the public in general, but I think the Alex Jones shows and many other shows have really encouraged the American public to stand up and say, listen, we're not stupid. And, 9/11 occurred, and that happened, but that's not going to happen again. And this whole story, and nonsensical story of Osama bin Laden, who's already been dead for 10 years, from Marfan syndrome, can't be used as a pretext for further increased security against the American public and a reason to send our brave men and women into wars that are really not of any great advantage for our national security, but in effect let China come into Pakistan and use their resources, and China come into Afghanistan to use their resources. So the issue now becomes, does Obama understand that he has made a very big mistake, along with his White House cronies and sycophants, and that if they pursue this nonsensical story, which even the New York Times is pointing out on the front page, Elizabeth Buehler is pointing out the inconsistencies. Now, when the New York Times points that out, you know very well there's a serious problem, that the story just doesn't work anymore. That doesn't diminish the role of our military. That doesn't diminish the role of brave intelligence operatives who are out there for many other reasons than terrorism. We do have other problems, which have to do with drug cartels, gang wars, and other issues I don't want to get into. But at this particular point in time, there is a very clear voice, the loud, unspoken, but very clearly heard voice from the American public to Obama and his coteries: cease and desist this nonsensical psyops operation. And I'm just one single individual, an American citizen, no better, no worse, somebody who served 8 to 9 times in our government, and is willing to die once again to say, we can't continue this cronyism, the capital cronyism, the klepto cronyism, and the psychological operations that they've been pulling, not only in the world against Muslims, innocent Muslims, but also against the United States of America that consists of all types of people. So that can't continue. And Obama is on notice, and he's on notice very clearly. And if he continues to pursue this nonsensical psyops with stories that make no sense whatsoever, the inherent contradictions will blow up in his face as they're doing now, and eventually he'll have to confront the American public with another one of his lame speeches. But we'll see what happens.
What does it mean that they've resurrected this specter of bin Laden at this not only at a politically expedient point in time, but at a time where they're looking to more or less rebrand our war on terror? They've already told us they want it to go on 40, 50, 100 years, but we're in this new front with Libya. Al-Qaeda's a sort of ally again, as it was in the Yugoslav war years. Why have they resurrected bin Laden at this time, and why is that an indication that we're on watch for greater terror alerts?
Well, there's one word for that, and that word is desperation. When you really don't know what to do, when you don't know how to bring the increased number of unemployed people back into the labor force, and you really don't know how to control the Congress, and you really don't know how to control the budget, and you don't know how to deal with the fiscal irresponsibility. The big national security problem is not Al-Qaeda or anybody else. It's our debt and our financial crisis. What it means is that when you're desperate and you can't deal with internal problems, you always look to external issues. And this is a classical psychological operation, which Hitler did when he had used prisoners of war to basically invade Poland. When any country has an internal problem, they externalize their problem. In this case, Obama fell into the old, trite, and almost pathetic psychological operation where we say we have Osama bin Laden, and Obama, had ordered Panetta to shoot Obama. Well, Osama, there's a Freudian slip again, but basically when you, well, Obama been lying. I mean, it's all becoming so ridiculous that it's almost like a Walt Disney. I have to explain what's happening in Disneyland, and it's getting very tiresome to explain that the ridiculousness of the PSYOPs operation is really ridiculous from a PSYOPs point of view, which I taught for over 30 years and was involved in. This is so poorly constructed that even within the psychological operation, it doesn't make sense. You're resurrecting a man who everyone in the community knows was dead 10 years ago. The men in the CIA who were involved know very well that he had died of Marfan syndrome under Clinton, actually, and the Bush administration used it. That didn't work. And so they created a narrative which Bush Jr. perpetrated, and it didn't work then. And now Obama's resurrecting it out of desperation because he wants to, one, look very assertive, two, more than anything else, this man, who has really done very little in his life, and also in the presidency, wants to resurrect the notion that he's a very assertive leader, and that having been assertive and having reaffirmed that he's an American citizen through a birth certificate, quote, end quote, he now can show you that not only is he American, but he's really a John Wayne American because he can go out and kill the man who's already dead.
Exactly,
really
exactly.
Absurd.
And you mentioned Panetta
to go in and kill a dead man.
Sorry, you mentioned...
he wants to get reelected in 2012 and really preempt the Republican Party. Since the Republican Party is very weak and the Tea Party has been marginalized, and there's almost no one in the system that will
Dr. Pieczenik, you mentioned Panetta. How important is it that he's moving to Secretary of Defense at this time? How important is it that he looks tough on terror so that they can maintain some support for all these wars?
Well, actually, he's been a very dysfunctional individual. I don't know the gentleman. I know his history. He's really what comes out of the school of what we call the pandering school of politicians. He's just a low-level politician who worked for Clinton. He is very good in one area, and that's budget allocation. He knows nothing about the military. When he took over the CIA, it was a disaster under him. As you remember, there was a whole episode where 7 operatives were killed because they couldn't vet out one of the informants, who was a doctor, by the way. And then he's been killing civilians repeatedly with the drone attacks. So it has changed from a CIA, has changed from an analytical and intelligent and a human operation into basically reallocating special forces and mercenaries. So most of the CIA right now is really a mercenary unit with special forces reallocated to him. So there's really no more or very little of what we used to have in a very effective CIA under Bush Sr. and other presidents. I think his coming to Secretary of Defense is a very serious mistake. I don't think he's qualified. I don't think he really knows anything about the military. He knows really nothing about national security. His poor performance as a CIA director just reaffirms the fact that the president really doesn't care about performance. Neither did Bush Jr., and he just wants really loyalty and sycophants around him who he thinks he can control. His only asset, which is a strong asset, is budget allocation. But given the fact that he was a politician, still is a politician, is not an intelligence operative, really doesn't understand intelligence, I think this is not a very good sign. The best Secretary of Defense we have had up to date, besides George Marshall, has been Gates. There's no accident that Gates was brought in. Many of us who worked for Bush Sr. were great advocates for Gates instead of having Donald Rumsfeld, also an incompetent Secretary of Defense, and a very dangerous one at that. In this case, Panetta is not as malevolent or Machiavellian as Rumsfeld was, whom Bush Sr. really didn't like, and none of us in the White House who worked for Bush Sr. and the State Department ever liked or respected. Panetta is really much more incompetent. Gates, unfortunately, has been one of the best secretaries of defense. He knows exactly what our strategies need to be. He knows exactly what the allocation of resources are required. But unfortunately, he's tired. And I think he's tired of a lot of the nonsense that's going on in this administration, and he wants to go back to private life. I don't know the gentleman. I know of him. We've been in many administrations together, but I have a great respect for him. I have a great respect for his generals who work underneath him, Petraeus and others. and I think we will have a strong military. I do not believe that our military, not the national security guards, but our military will ever shoot American citizens. Let me repeat that again, and let me tell that to our intelligence operatives who are listening to the show. Again, let me explain it to you, gentlemen and ladies. Do not in any way think that our military will ever shoot American citizens. Those who serve our country and are dedicated to our country will not do what happened in 1970 in Ohio at Kent State and kill several students. If that happens, Obama has much more than a serious problem. He has a revolution. So I am not convinced that it's going to happen. Whether we have incompetent people in the so-called paramilitary and the more local law enforcement, so the TSA and the so-called Homeland Security, and an accident occurs there, that's more likely. But from the point of view of professional military, the ones that I know that are not self-aggrandizing and not promoting themselves in the newspapers, and you don't know about them, nor should you, these are very professional, dedicated patriots to our country. Plus, we have many veterans in this country, including myself and millions of others who serve the country, that will not allow a standout false flag operation to occur again. And furthermore, we really have to look at the problem of what happens to these men and women who go to the countries, who are sent by civilians who've never served in the military, including Clinton, Bush Jr., and Obama. And basically, what happens is when they come back, they don't have a house because the banks foreclosed on them. They don't get health benefits because the VA doesn't have enough money to provide them with mental health. And they don't have the reimbursements that are required for them. So we not only send these men and women to death for causes that are never clear and are never very relevant to our national security, but when they come back, we discard them as cannon fodder, and that is inexcusable. So what happens in effect is that we are building up a critical mass, including myself and millions of other veterans who served this country for many years, who are disgruntled, disappointed, angry, and that will be funneled into an articulation that could be quite serious to this presidency if he does not be careful about the narrative that he is continuing.
Doctor, you're right. There's a lot of military and police who know better than to follow legal orders, and that's why we have great organizations like the Oath Keepers trying to reach those people and remind them not to follow illegal orders, that their loyalty is to the American people. But I want to switch gears briefly to the whistleblower. I mean, recap the warning that you were told by a top general that 9/11 was a false flag, that your knowledge about bin Laden, but also the role of whistleblowers. The Madoff whistleblower was ignored for a decade. You blew the whistle almost a decade ago. Barely any attention. Sybil Edmonds was an FBI translator. She blew the whistle. So many others. There's been people trying to beat the drum on this issue. What is it going to take to really take the 9/11 false flag, we don't want a continuing war on terror movement, into the mainstream of the ordinary public?
Well, let me, with all due respect to you and the audience, I'm not a whistleblower. I literally am just an American citizen who, when I saw the events of 9/11, not only did I understand what happened, but remember, I teach this at the war colleges and at various places, so I knew right away who was involved. Rumsfeld, Cheney, Wolfowitz, again, never been held accountable, Hadley, Condoleezza Rice, Elliot Abrams. You have a whole bunch of these neocons. The answer is, it's very simple. I really never stopped going on the air, and Alex Jones is one of the first people to bring me up. But the reality is, we have to go on the air repeatedly and elect officials whom we feel really represent the voice of the people. Now, the beginnings of the Tea Party, I'm not here to criticize them, had that initial urge of saying, look, we want less federal government, we want transparency, and we want accountability. That all sounds fine, but the minute it was co-opted by very razzle-dazzle personalities and extremely charismatic people who I don't in any way begrudge, because that's the American way, it was immediately diminished in importance. So what really happens? The critical group in this country of people who really have an invested interest in transparency and in national security are by definition the veterans. We who have fought, the men and women and the children who fought for our country in the various wars, understand what it means that liberty is not given to us. We have to acquire it. But we will not go out and kill for just purposes that are defined by civilians who've never been in war and have no strategic end other than their own political self-aggrandizement.
Doctor, we're going to be back on the other side to continue on this line. I'm Aaron Dykes. This is the Alex Jones Show. We are back in the last segment with Dr. Steve Pieczenik. Doctor, we have so many more questions to ask you. First off, I want to know, could you do 5 minutes with us into overtime?
Absolutely, no problem. For the Alex Jones Show, I'll do another hour.
Well, thank you very much. Look, there's been Forbes, there's been New York Magazine, other mainstream publications. They've reported on you being on the show in the last few days. They admit that you are who you say you are, but they're trying to belittle it. They're joking about it. They're not paying serious attention, but they have been forced to respond. What do you make of that, sir?
I don't know, because I don't buy Forbes. I don't respect the Forbes family. If you know anything about the Forbes family, you will know with the Delanoff family, they were in the drug business in the 1890s, 1880s. They were selling opium to China in the Boxer Revolution. So they can say whatever they want. All I think they want is for somebody to buy their subscription. But it's of little value to me what Forbes has to say. What's the other magazine, The New Yorker? That's a joke. That's really a self-righteous magazine for liberals on the West End Avenue and 85th Street who could sit there and mull over, but I have no interest in any of them. I'm too busy doing business and really, quite frankly, enjoying going on your show, but I have no time to read most of that. But they know they're extinct, so there really is nothing there of interest. There's nothing to address there. I think basically they delegitimized themselves a long time ago. But
that's what we see in all the mainstream, of course.
History, where they were drug pushers, and they have been for a long time. And then Forbes himself, I think, should be very careful as to whether he says anything, because his own father and his family has a very, very dark history in many, many aspects. So I would consider that they should shut their mouth up and just close up business, and probably they should join your show and go on the Internet. That's my attitude.
Exactly. What do you see on the front? Do you see another false flag in the works with all this hype propaganda? And where would you expect to see it?
From the point of view of the extremist, you would see a false flag. But as I said to you before, it's a very dangerous concept for anyone and that's why I'm saying again to my colleagues in the intelligence community and the military community, if they're even just thinking of doing a false flag. It's a very dangerous consideration, because this country is not the same country it was in 2001 when they pulled a false flag and stand-down operation. Everybody knows now what stand-down means, what a false flag. If for any reason there happens to be something that even smells of a false flag, they will have a very serious disturbance in the United States populace. And I don't think Obama understands it. I don't really think many of his coterie do. But fortunately, there are some very bright people in the White House, and they know who they are, and they're listening to me, and they understand. I think it's best that they cease and desist this absurd narrative of the attack on a mortuary to get a body that was dead for 10 years, and just stop it. Because even the New York Times and Bill Keller, who I do admire, the managing director, and I've known him since he was a young writer, they're beginning to question this. And Roger Ailes, who I admire immensely, who's head of Fox News and who created Fox News, he knows that this is absurd. And even though his people below him, the other shows, these people, and Ted Turner, who lives in Montana, these are very smart individuals. And at some point, they're going to make their own papers say, okay, it's enough. The American public doesn't buy it. They don't want it. Let's talk about the real issues, which is a deficit. The biggest national security problem, without a doubt, is right now our economy.
Dr. Steve Pieczenik, we're going to continue on the other side in a few minutes of Overdrive. This is the Alex Jones Show. You want to hear all this information, I guarantee you. Sitting in for Alex, but as I said earlier, this is not a day you want to miss. This is not a day you want to sit down and do nothing. We have the terrorist rhetoric at fever pitch, this ridiculous bin Laden hoax, and we're on with counterterrorism expert and perennial government official, Dr. Steve Pieczenik. We were just talking about how the bigwigs can see through this. So many of the people can see through this. In your previous appearances on this show, you mentioned that we need a new peaceful American revolution. Do you think calling the White House, trying to reach out and let them know that people understand what's going on, is that a good first step? And how do we reach a tipping point, sir?
I like what you did, and I think the American public should do that. I think they should call their senators and their congressmen and their state senators, and I think there should be a response. If there is not a response, then the American people understand we need to have a third party, and we have to start calling into question, number one, the electoral college process. That doesn't work anymore. It doesn't represent the people of the United States. Secondly, I think the veterans of America should really organize together along with their families to say, we don't really have a legitimate third party which expresses what we want. We will not accept this nonsense between the Republicans and Democrats, which seems to be nothing more than just shifting hats between different members of the whorehouse. I mean, I remember President Truman saying, when I leave the office of the presidency, they wanted me to endorse various aspects. He said, they didn't want me as the president. They want the office of the presidency. He said, the only difference between me and a president is just that I'm a piano player in a whorehouse. And he was very honest. He left with no money, no book guarantees, unlike our present president. And he left an honest, poor man with his benefits from having been in World War I. And what I'm asking again of the American public is very simple. Call the White House, call your legislators, call whomever. But when that doesn't work, which I suspect it will not work, then it's time for the American public to wake up and say, okay, there was one party that came up and represented whatever, but it's time for us to really get together and to say to ourselves, let's be practical, we're pragmatic, we're basically individuals. We don't want federal government involved in our business and our private lives. We don't need religion to be imposed upon us and be an issue on the practical elements of our own life and where we're going. And we have men and women, over 11 million veterans of different wars, who are saying, we gave our life to this country. Now it's time for the country to give us something back, which is literally our democracy. So in doing so, we create papers, we go on the Internet, we do shows like you have, and we go out and demonstrate, all peacefully, just as the way it was done in Egypt, it's done elsewhere. If the federal government confronts us with guns and war, I don't think that should happen, nor will it happen. But if that is the case, I will be certain that there are men in the military who will not do that and will prevent that from happening. So I say to the American public, once again, the voice of the people is the voice of God. Vox Populus, Vox Deus. It's your turn, it's your chance, but I am tired as an American citizen, not because I'm a counter-terrorist export, which I think is a great line, because I was exported out to go after terrorists.
Freudian slip again.
Something very funny about the business of terrorism, and it's something peculiar to it. Today's terrorist is tomorrow's statesman. When I worked against Arafat, and he killed one of our ambassadors, and we hunted him, and he knew we were after him, years later, I had to deal with him as statesman in the Camp David Accords. And don't ever forget that, because we, too, American revolutionaries, were born as revolutionaries. John Adams, Jefferson, George Washington, we were all terrorists in the eyes of the British. Years later, we became the official founding fathers of this state. Now, Al-Qaeda is a product of our own government, created by our government for the purposes of our national security. Those days are gone. We don't need it. There is no more war on terrorism. What there is an economic war which we have to address. And the most serious national security problem is our debt and our financial growth. We have to grow at a rate.
Okay, I suppose that's all the time we have. It is time to stand up.